Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. I'm Sebastian Wenthy, today's host of the Nothing But Dicta podcast, and joining me now is Stephen Haspel, a GW Law alum and a trial attorney with National Trial Law based out in Texas. Mr. Haspel, thanks for joining me today. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and I'm really excited to talk about trial work. It's something that I'm passionate about because I noticed you did mock trial and moot court. That's something I did in undergrad too, and that's something that I did in high school. And so I've always loved trial work, and that's something that I've always wanted to get into. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about how you went down that path and maybe learn a bit and hopefully share with other people who might be interested in taking that same route too.
Absolutely.
So when you went into law school, did you already know that you wanted to be a trial attorney, or is that something that you kind of learned along the way and kind of realized that you like?
So when I first went to law school, I guess I had a similar history that you had in the sense that I was very involved in mock trial in high school and undergrad. So I went into law school wanting to be a trial lawyer without having, I think, a really good understanding of what a trial lawyer actually is. But I went in knowing that was something as close to mock trial as I could get in the real world. That's really what I wanted to be doing. And so my law school path, I think was a little bit different than some. And ultimately it landed me exactly where I wanted to be. But yeah, going into law school, I dreamt of being the trial lawyer that I was in fake trials in college.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite, I know there's probably a lot of people who've never done mock trial, but essentially it's the simulation of a court trial from start to finish, from opening statements through direct examinations and crossing, closing, and you really get to simulate to the fullest extent possible a real trial. And so I think it's a very, very good experience. Did you find that it was helpful once you were starting to look for a job after work or even during law school?
Absolutely. I think, the line on a resume is valuable, of course, but I think the much more, tangible skill set that you get from doing mock trial is once you're through the door in an interview setting. I'm confident that all the great opportunities that I've been given and that I'm so thankful for are, were offered to me directly due to the interpersonal skills and communication skills that you learn from doing trial advocacy type activities. There's really just no substitute for it, because at the end of the day, even though you and I are talking through a screen, one day we will get back to normal. And I think that, the ability to communicate with your colleagues, clients, obviously courts and juries is so important. And I know that my experience in those activities is what got me through that door for sure.
Definitely. And obviously communication skills are huge when it comes to, being in a courtroom and presenting and doing trial type work. Are there any other skills that maybe you weren't as expecting to be as important that you ended up relying on a lot once you actually stepped into your profession?
The first thing that comes to mind without question is writing. Being in mock trial and dreaming of the life of a trial advocate, writing was not part of that picture
Right.
at the time. And so the skill that I took with me, that I use actually more than I do my actual, oral advocacy skills, or, is writing, research and writing. I think that the skills that we learn in our first year of law school, especially at GW's LRW program, because it's so robust, and I think one of the best legal research and writing programs in the country, that has actually made me a better trial lawyer. It's you can get into the courtroom and talk all you want, but if you're not correct on the law, if you're not understanding, arguing the facts correctly and persuasively to the court, you're never going to get your day in court, and you're never going to get your trial. And so, one of the things that I think it's impossible to appreciate until you're actually in it and you can call yourself a trial lawyer is, and at least in the type of trial law that I do, the overwhelming majority of my time is still spent writing. And I know I laugh because it's, oh darn, I wish I could be arguing cases every day, but um, it's a your writing skills are really your bread and butter. And when you get to try a case and you get to stand in front of a jury, that's really just the cherry on top.
You mentioned that your law school sort of path was a little different. How did you orient yourself during law school to become a trial attorney?
Honestly, I just really had to be okay with making decisions that the overwhelming majority of my peers would raise their eyebrows at. So, for example, a big push for law students is to participate in OCR and go into the big firm, trajectory, which is a fantastic opportunity, and it's something that I ended up doing, but it's what I learned what I didn't want to do. And so to answer your question, how did I learn, or what path did I take? It essentially was having faith in myself and trusting my decision making, even if it went against the norm, that what the overwhelming majority of my peers thought was the best decision to do. And so, that meant passing on accepting a full-time offer for, at a firm after graduation that I knew would never get me into a courtroom ever. Um, it,
Right.
it, it meant rather than participating heavily on a journal, for example, I did very, very time-intensive active internships my second year of law school in both divisions of the DOJ. And that experience was invaluable because it sharpened the skills that I would be using more so than my legal research and than what I'd be doing if I were working heavily on a journal. And and so it was those types of decisions. It was, you know, seeing the norm put in front of me, the OCR and law review stuff put in front of me, and kind of look at it critically and think to myself, is that actually going to set me up for success, for the success that I want to achieve? And you know, that's a scary question to ask yourself, because you're in a school with a ton of people who obviously will think differently. Um, but then also it's having, I think, the faith in yourself to actually make the decision. No, I'm not going to go that route because I trust that this other decision is actually better for me. And at times it was hard to trust that. It was hard to, and the pathway to falling into a trial firm is very different. It's very challenging, and it's just there's just no formula for it. And so that can be a scary feeling. But trusting in myself and what I really wanted to achieve, it got me there. And so I think that's a really long-winded answer to kind of explain, how my law school path looked different. It looked different because I knew I didn't want what the mold really offered. And so I had to carve out my own path a bit. And that can be a bit scary when you're in such a large school and so many people are making the same decisions and you're, kind of out on your own.
So I'm kind of interested in wondering what work specifically do you do? What field is your firm focused on? And how do you enjoy that work?
Sure. So the firm is exclusively plaintiff side, which was really important to me. For the majority of our cases, we represent injured plaintiffs for catastrophic personal injury. We also have a lot of FTCA litigation. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's the Federal Tort Claims Act. It's essentially what allows individual people to sue the federal government for negligence. And it's very complex statute, but they're high stakes, high value cases, and they're really challenging because when we're litigating against the federal government, I mean, the easiest way to think about it, that's the largest law firm in the country, in the world. And
Right.
so they have a ton of resources at their disposal. They're a very worthy adversary. And so it's a very challenging, opponent to face, but deeply rewarding, because, we're fighting for, injured families and Texans and people actually all over the country. That's why, we're called national trial law. Our cases take us all over the country. But I would say the most rewarding part of it is being on the plaintiff side, because I know it's kind of cheesy to say it, but I love using my brain at work, and if I can, I want to use my heart too, and that's being at this shop. It's allowed me to do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking to me today.
Great talking to you, Sebastian. I appreciate it.
Take care.